there, friends. Welcome back or welcome to my channel, The Humble Homemaker. My name is Michaela, and I'm so glad that you decided to join me in my kitchen today. So right now in this video, I am just straining some bone broth that I've had simmering all day. And this is definitely one of my favorite ways to not only make a meal more nutritious, but it's also a lot cheaper because I was able to make this broth from the carcass of a chicken dinner that I made earlier this week. So not only is it healthier, but it's also a lot tastier and cheaper. I guess I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the video that I am making chicken and dumplings tonight. So now I'm just going ahead and getting my dumpling dough started. So for this recipe, it's pretty simple. I just do 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, and then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And I really prefer the baking powder that doesn't have any added aluminum in it. I've tried both, and I just find personally that the aluminum baking powder has a funny taste. Like, you can definitely taste the metallicness to it. I don't know if that's just a me thing or what, but yeah, I definitely prefer aluminum-free baking powder. So do 1/2 teaspoon of that, and then also do 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then here I have 6 tablespoons of butter, cold butter. And you're going to want to slice it into chunks, or you could use a dough cutter, basically anything that will get it small, into smaller pieces. I've even frozen my butter in little chunks like this, and then I'll put it in the food processor to make it really small, and I think that works great for pie crust, but I just didn't have time for that tonight, so chopping it up into smaller chunks and then using my hands as a makeshift dough cutter. I'm just going to be kind of squishing the butter between my fingers and incorporating it with the flour until it turns, I guess, kind of into like a sandy consistency. You want it to be well incorporated, but you don't want to overwork it to where the butter starts melting a lot into the dough. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm definitely all for kitchen gadgets and whatnot, but I have a small kitchen and not a ton of storage space, so I definitely prefer to use my hands for things like this and for kneading breads and whatnot. So I got the consistency that I wanted here. Now I'm just rinsing my hands, and then I'm gonna grab some whole milk. But you could also use cold water if you don't have milk, if you're, really wanting to make this a super budget-friendly meal. But I just like the flavor that the milk gives it. So I added in 3/4 cup of whole milk. And then I am just going to stir this up until it forms kind of a wet, shaggy dough. Now I'm just going to turn it out onto my counter. Now, if your dough is really, really wet, like completely unworkable with your hands, you can definitely go ahead and add some more flour, but mine seemed to be okay tonight, so I'm just going ahead and kneading that with my hands. And like I said, it is going to be kind of a sticky dough, so don't be alarmed if it's sticking to your counter a bit. But I just like to knead it for maybe a minute or two, just to kind of strengthen the gluten bonds in the dough ball. That way it forms a nice little dumpling in the soup later. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in the bowl and set it in the fridge while we prepare the rest of our chicken and dumplings. And I'm definitely someone who likes to clean the kitchen as I go, so I was just putting some stuff away. Now I'm gonna go ahead and chop up one small onion. You could use a big onion if you want, just depends on how much onion flavor you like, but I just use a small one today. And then this is my veggie scrap bag, freezer bag. I like to save carrot ends, celery ends, and pieces of onion, including the skin, and I put that in the freezer, and then I use it for my homemade bone broths. It definitely helps give it more flavor, and it's a lot less wasteful. So now I'm just sauteing the onion, and I thought that the remaining fat from the broth earlier would be enough to saute it, but I'm gonna go ahead and add some beef tallow, just about a teaspoon. And I always like to rub it into my hands because it's such a good moisturizer. Don't want to waste any. Alright, so now I am going to be just kind of roughly chopping up the leftover chicken from the chicken dinner I mentioned earlier in the video. So I really like to make recipes that are dual purpose, that I can, I can take the leftovers and I can make a whole nother meal with it later in the week. It's very economical and it really saves on food waste. And I do plan on making a video later on talking more about how I like to repurpose recipes and kind of create meal plans based around being able to repurpose prior dinners. So yeah, I am just chopping up that chicken that was left over, and this will be the meat for our chicken and dumplings. Now I'm just adding in some garlic, probably about maybe a tablespoon of minced garlic. Again, you can adjust this to how much you like the flavor of garlic. You could just not even put it in at all if you don't want to. So now it is time to add in the delicious, beautiful bone broth. I seriously love making homemade broth. It tastes so much better and it's just so rich and beautiful. Not to mention healthy. Now I am just adding in all of that chicken. It's probably about, 4 cups of chicken maybe. Now I'm just going to put on the lid and let that come to a boil. And then it is time for the, not biscuits, sorry, for the dumplings. So I'm just taking, I guess I like smaller dumplings in my soups. That way there's like more in the soup, if that makes sense. You definitely could do, bigger chunks if you wanted to, but I like small, kind of randomly shaped chunks, and I find that it's a lot faster to make this way as well. So I'm just kind of, taking little scoops and plopping it into the soup. It's pretty easy. I also want to mention, maybe you should use a bigger stock pot than I did, because it's about to overflow. But anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and put the lid on that and let it cook, and look at those beautiful dumplings in there. So now I'm just tasting for seasonings. I don't add any seasonings to my bone broth. I like to wait, just because it depends. The seasonings depend on the recipe you're going to use it for. So it was definitely lacking salt. So I did end up adding a full tablespoon of salt to the broth. Now, if that's too much for you, then obviously you go ahead and you adjust that to your liking. But for us, this was perfect. And this was probably about 8 cups of broth, just so you can kind of get, gauge how much that would be, depending on how much broth you use. So yeah, I did end up adding the full tablespoon eventually. So I'm just tasting it again, and I highly, highly, highly encourage you to always veer on the side of caution with seasonings and start small and keep tasting. You will thank yourself later for not just dumping in a ton of stuff and ruining your entire meal. Believe me, I have done that in the past, and it is extremely frustrating. So learn from my mistakes and just take it slow with the seasonings. So I'm also just adding a teaspoon of parsley and a teaspoon of thyme. And I'm gonna add, I believe I added about half of a teaspoon of black pepper. And as you can see, I'm really struggling to get this open. So yeah, don't mind me. So that's all that I season my chicken and dumplings with, but if there's something that you like to use, this would be the time to go ahead and add it. And feel free to experiment with the different combinations. Also, if you maybe don't have a fresh onion or fresh garlic, you can substitute garlic powder and onion powder in this step as well. So here I am just adding the rest of that salt that I talked about earlier, so it was a full tablespoon. Just giving that a mix and giving it another taste. And that was perfect for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid back on and just kind of let all those flavors marry together. Now it is time to add some green peas. So this is optional. You definitely don't have to add peas if you don't like peas. Sometimes I don't add them, but I do like having a pop of color in it because it is kind of a sad beige dish without any vegetables in there. Sometimes I add carrots as well, and I let that simmer for about another 5 minutes. And this is the result. This dish is so comforting and hearty and filling, especially in the fall and winter when it's chilly outside. And I live in Ohio, so we definitely get our fair share of chilly weather. So this is our bowls plated up, me and my husband's. My kids had some as well, and there's definitely plenty to be had tomorrow. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me in my kitchen this evening, and I hope that you give this recipe a try and let me know how you like it, or let me know if you have a special chicken and dumpling recipe. I'd love to know. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye.